So many of you may know Al Judy by reputation, particularly people here in the on the east side of the continent. Al Judy has been a scale model railroader for over 50 years, beginning with HO scale in the mid 60s and adding HON3 in the 1980s. He was always a lover of backwoods and logging style modeling. The arrival of ON30 in the 90s was the great evolution for Al as a craftsman modeler. These experiences and developed skills have led to a career as a professional model railroader. Working in many scales and gauges, Al has done work across the country for private collectors, historical societies, museums, and commercial displays. Scratch building, kit bashing, painting, weathering, and detailing everything from historical structures to private road rosters. Al is also the chair for the National Narrow Gauge Convention in Pittsburgh. He's also a mentor to several startup model railroading companies, and his motto is drive modelers to the hobby, not out of it, which is an interesting take. Al, it's over to you.
All right, Jerry, thank you. And thanks for having me this evening, for inviting me. Tonight, we'll talk a little bit about my layout and some of my techniques. We'll start out with my journey into the hobby. So I've been a model railroader for actually almost 60 years. This is me in 1960 with my first train, a Marx wind-up. I was 2 years old. So I guess not really a modeler for 60 years, but a train lover for 60 years. So it didn't take long until I realized that, yeah, I needed to get into scale model railroading. So here I was, this was my 6th birthday. I got an HO scale set with the, of course, the metal embossed tunnel gives away the time period. From there, it progressed. By the time I was 12 and in junior high school, I started weathering and lettering and painting, and with some help from my art teacher in high school, I was able to do some weathering. Here I am in college. Wish I had that much hair still. Couldn't do any model railroading, but I honed my skills by building models and painting Dungeons and Dragons figures, which was very popular at the time for all the people that played that in the dorm. So it gave me a chance to use some of my skills. When I finished college, with about a degree in business administration and about 4 years of retail experience under my belt, I opened Al's Trains, hobby shop in a shopping center. Specialized trains only, didn't do any RCs or models or anything like that. Had that shop for about 10 years until the internet took about 70% of my business away, and it was time to move on to something else. So let's jump to the present. About 5 years ago, we moved from a large home in northern Pennsylvania to Harrisburg. And we loved this home, but it had no basement because there's a stream right beside the house. So my wife said she'd give me the garage. So this is what it looked like when we bought the house. And shortly thereafter, I had the garage door removed and designed this system with a rollback door. And when you roll the door back, you have the man door into my shop and train room so that anybody coming to visit doesn't have to go all the way through the house to get in there. So it worked out very well for us. And then if we step inside, the first, as you come through the door, I have a 10 by 12 workshop. I try to keep everything neat and organized. I hate hunting for things I know I have that I can't find. So actually almost to the point of being over neat, I guess. I also clean up after every project, put everything away, put everything back in its place. I like to start over fresh. I think a neat space makes for neat work. Okay, Jerry. Just another view of the shop there. Go ahead. And there's my parts boxes. I bought those bins from AC Moore when they went out of business, and the 18 compartment parts cabinet or parts trays fit in beautifully. So that's where I keep all my detail parts and things like that, and have everything lettered so it's easy to find them when I need them. closer view, all lettered. Once again, I'm fanatical about keeping track of where things are. Okay, Jerry. And then the entrance to my training room is there on the left. And this is an antique door I picked up at a yard sale. Great patina, and had the glass lettered for Mill Creek and Lycoming for my railroad. So when you look in, you can see my display cases in the entrance. I have about, I don't know, 150, 160 locomotives, all custom done. I really don't have anything out of the box. Everything's one of a kind, kit bashed or customized, something along that line. I like to make each piece my own. So now we'll get to the layout. My ON30 layout runs around 3.5 walls of a 1.5 car garage. And it's 52 inches high. I have desks and workbenches underneath it the whole way around the room. So here is where it starts. I have a line coming in, comes in just from the face of the layout, which is a logging line coming into the town of Hillsgrove. Most of the buildings here are custom or scratch built. The large building in the back was a combination of some leftover parts with some scratch built pieces there. It's the old match factory. All right, Jerry. So as you progress into town, you can see a line coming out of along the back there. That's another line just coming out of nowhere into town. So those are two logging lines that run into Hillsgrove. If you'll notice in the foreground there's an old foundation with a lot of detail. I like to put a lot of detail at the very front of the layout. It's an old artist trick. Everybody assumes that level of detail runs throughout. So if you put all of your focus up front, everybody assumes it runs the whole way through. As we go around here, we make their first turn, and this is West End. And there you have two lines, once again, just going off the end of the layout in the back. Water tank on each side. Here in the foreground, we have the Chama Oils building, which I did in yellow to give it a yellow brick to give it a different look. The Mount Albert coal loader there in the background, and a little station. All right. So we come around, we hit the, this is going into the fueling facility for West End. A few holding tracks in the back. Go ahead, Jerry. And there's the oil tank, and there's an ash pit in the back corner. So we have a sand house, wood, and fuel for the locomotives. And then we start on to the Stony Valley Viaduct. And this is an HO viaduct, which the stone was huge for HO, I thought. So it's in 9-inch sections. So I bought a bunch of them and put them together, widened the deck on top with the overhang in the back where you can't actually see it, and then cut one in half to make the ends transition into the abutments. The overall structure is about 45 inches long and is a centerpiece as you come into the room. As we come off of the viaduct, we have a tower there. That's the original master from Foggy Mountains. I actually designed that kit for them, did up the drawings, and when they sold out of the kit, they sold me the master. So it's kind of a special piece there for me. And this is coming into East End with the Mercantile and a little freight station, caboose holding track. A unique feature of the layout here, something that most people don't do, all of my scenery material is loose. I only glue down the fine earth on the base and of course the static grass. Everything else, including the ballast, is loose on the layout. It allows for changes in the layout. If you want to change out a structure or move a track, if you have to service a switch, makes it very easy to do. The other nice thing is it doesn't get that dusty old look when you glue things down, and that hard look. It keeps everything fresh, just even the vibration of the trains and that as they move around help the dust go down through. And on areas that the trains don't keep it clean, I use an oversized makeup brush and just stempel the scenery with that soft brush, and the dust goes to the bottom and everything looks like it was just put down yesterday. This layout was built about 3 years ago, and you can see how fresh it looks. All right, Jerry. And as we progress on down into Mill Creek, here's the Stony Creek Models machine shop and foundry. And right next to those, I have an unusual Rags to Riches engine house. Jerry. There we go. This was custom built by Rags to Riches for a gentleman in Virginia. He did not have room for their 2-stall engine house, and he talked them into making a single stall, which was never commercially made. And I'm lucky enough to have ended up as the owner of it. So it's a great looking piece, beautiful stonework, has a lift-off roof. So when I got it, it didn't have an interior. And if we go to the next picture there, Jerry, you'll be able to see in through the doors. Oh, I'm sorry. We're not that far yet. Go ahead, Jerry. We'll come back to the engine house. So this is, again, the end of Mill Creek, and you can see the line goes off into the layout. We've traveled about 50 feet now. And once again, a water tank, fueling facility, a sand house, freight house in the station, loading dock, a couple of sidings. And it just represents the line going on and continuing off the layout. And as we come around the curve, we come around the old mill pond that I wrote a magazine article on this. I had gotten that dam breastworks from a collection, a layout that I bought, and it had about 2 inches of resin poured up against it. So there was no way for me to salvage the entire beautifully built, scratch-built dam. So I took it out the best I could, and I thought I have to be able to use these pieces. So I wrote a magazine article about during a heavy flood, in order to save the mill, they dynamited the dam to keep the mill from flooding. So that was my my way of being able to use that unusual piece. All right, Jerry. As we come around, there's the dry landing for the mill. It's a Sierra West mill. I went with the dry landing over actually having a pond, just because real estate is so valuable on a bookshelf layout. Even though I have a lot of length, most of the layout is only 24 inches deep. The two ends are 36 inches deep, but this saved a lot of space and still made for an interesting scene. All right, here we can see the entire mill. And those of you that are familiar with the Sierra West kit, I've added a large lumber dock on the end of it yet, making the overall structure about 45 inches long. So it's definitely a centerpiece on the layout. The building in the background would be is a planing mill. That's a scratch-built building. Okay, Jerry. And here you can see more of the loading dock. Another scratch built, that's a box mill along the back wall. That's actually about 38 inches long. It's a pretty big structure and about 4 inches deep. And in the foreground, we have all the support buildings. There's a carpenter shop, supervisor's office, supply house, oils house, and of course, there's a small engine house as we progress, and here's the sand and water for that. And as we move down to the last shot of the layout, the very end, there's the little engine house. Pretty rickety. There's an ash pit. There's another ash pit in the foreground that's no longer used. It's actually full of water and tall grass and things like that. That's right there behind the caboose. The lighting that you see there is Dwarvan fiber optic lighting. We'll see some pictures later on of that lit up. It gives you a very nice, realistic puddle of light underneath, but more realistic than the other types that seem to light up the entire scene. All right, Jerry, and then here's a few overall views of the entire layout. I still use DC operation. I just find the old school toggle switches and the hum of the transformer not only basic and nostalgic, but part of the appeal of the hobby for me. And there's that end. So overall, there's 70 feet of backdrop and about 60 feet of faceboard. So it's a pretty nice size layout, allows for a lot of switching operations. You can stage 2 or 3 trains on the incoming tracks and then break them up throughout the industries and the mill. So when we looked at the engine cases, I talked about how I like unique and unusual one-of-a-kind pieces. And here we have a 210-4 Forney kit bash. This is a Bachmann ON30 shell on a Bachmann HO 10-wheeler drive, a decapod drive. So definitely one of a kind, I do believe. So here we can see, here's another unique engine. This is a Bachmann Forney that's been shortened. We call it Pudgy. And a nice example of the Dwarvan lighting there. You can see the puddles of light underneath. Dwarvan actually used this in one of their ads, this photograph. Here's a unique, once again, just a little Bachmann Porter, but with a wood cab and painted white, which makes it unusual. Tar paper roof on top, lantern hanging over the under the overhang, but it's, you know, just by using color, you can make it a very unique and unusual piece. Here we have a red Shay, same thing. A little bit different, sets it apart from the other dozen Shays that I have, but I have them done in several colors, and definitely just gives each one its own personality. Here's another shot of the, this is a Shay that was built using, the bunker is off of a Climax, which is a taller bunker. The stack on this is older than me. It's a wood turned stack, O-scale stack that I used on this. So yeah, very odd piece. This photograph was actually a contest winner at the 2023 National Narrow Gauge Convention. So here's another look back to the little Porter with the white cab. Here's its sister unit with a green cab. So 2 totally different looks out of the same locomotive. This is a Kit Bash Brothers rebuild kit for a Bachmann Mogul. I changed out the details on it, the lights, the stack, mounted the tanks a little bit differently. And this was actually highlighted in a magazine article on their kit. and they used this picture to show some of the options you could do with it. Now here's a look looking down across towards the mill of the layout. And I picked this picture to talk about continuity in modeling. Your layout is only as good as your best piece or your worst piece. So by trying to keep the level of work on the same quality level, just gives you a better overall look on a layout, I believe. If you're an average modeler and you buy a museum piece and put it in the middle of your layout, it just makes your average work look that much more average. So one of the first things I tell people when they ask is, if it's going to be average, make the whole thing average. Don't put in museum pieces or low-end pieces just because you have them. Try and keep the everything on the same level. It'll give you a much better overall presentation of your layout. Now we're back to the engine house. So here's a derelict Heisler. I use some unique weathering techniques. When I started weathering in 1970, there was really not much available commercially, if anything, for weathering. And I had mentioned my art teacher. He suggested using powdered paint pigments, the pigments that they used to mix with linseed oil and things like that to make paints. I started with that, and they only make 8 basic colors. And now I've developed by formulas for mixing about 30 or 32 different colors. I have 4 different shades of rust, a couple of different shades of dust. I use all of these to do to get the weathering effect. And the nice thing about it is it doesn't dissolve with clear coat. So if you put it on thick, when you clear coat it, you get that scaling, blistering rust look. So it works very well. The tarp is made out of single ply facial tissue. I just spray it with khaki flat tan paint and let it dry to where it's dry but still flexible, and then just shape it and let it dry from there to make the tarps. Go ahead, Jerry. Here's the inside view. You can see I put an interior in this in the engine house there, just to with open doors at both ends. It just gives it a little more character. All right, Jerry. Here's another look of how color can change things in your passenger cars, just by changing the door color, the brown roof, gray roof, black roof. Just gives everything a different look and gives you some unique pieces that way. Here's that red Shea again. This is one of my favorite pictures of the thousands I've taken. The lighting was great. It popped all the colors, and the reflection in the water was just spectacular. So yeah, one of my favorite shots out of all that I've done over the years. I picked this photo because of the action that it depicts. Even though it's a still photo, you've got people, figures that are, playing checkers and talking, leaning against the car. And with the headlight on, even though it's not moving, it gives you the representation of a working locomotive. Here's another picture of the lighting. This is a Alan Littlefield kit bash, Pug #2. And it was just a cute little piece with the light shining on him. So I thought I'd share this photo. You can see some of the details there. The tanks by the door, the canvas doors tied back on the shed. Anything to make it a little different. I try to make everything as unique as I can. This is a Bachmann trench locomotive, World War I trench locomotive. Lambert Locomotive Works made an American cab for it. And so I took that cab, and then by adding a different stack and spark arrestor and cab shades and toolboxes, I turned it into an American style backwoods logger from a World War I trench engine. So you know, there's you can use almost anything if you like it and want to make up a backstory for it. Here you can see that in the foreground, the foundation that we talked about earlier with all the details. And if you look back through the scene, as you go back through, the details get less and less. I like to have scenes with centerpieces. So here we have a brass steam shovel that was from Car Works, and put him there just sitting there in the tall grass, and it just draws that scene together with the smaller buildings and the workshops in the background. The blown up dam is in the foreground, so the steam shovel is there for a purpose. Talk a little bit more about the weathering here. This is an HO Shea that was kit bashed to ON30. And you can see it has moderate weathering on the boiler, a lot of grease on the working parts. Different levels give you different looks on your equipment. We go to the next one, Jerry. Here's one that's much heavier rust. And once again, you can see the texture and the scaling and the rust using the pigments. This one looks like it's about to be retired, but you can make it as heavy as you like or as light as you like. This was a brass flanger, and instead of using chipping fluid on this to get that the red oxide, I actually painted it on. I took a paintbrush and cut out a lot of the bristles, and then just sort of dry brush dabbled the red oxide over the yellow to give it the chipping look, and then used the pigments and some dry brush for the streaking. And on the next picture is a close-up, and you can see what kind of effect you get out of it. There you go. It's a pretty realistic blistering rust, and almost hides the Mill Creek and Lycoming on the side. The weathering has, or the weather has faded the lettering almost out. Here's one, another example, real heavy grease, a different shade of weathering, more grays than rust on this one. So it has that look of the heat from the boiler has lightened the paint, some streaking down from the different fittings and things like that. Doesn't only account for locomotives, but also rolling stock. Weathering, light to dark, doesn't matter if they all come out of the car shop at the same time. They're in different locations, different weather, different freight, and so you can just vary the weathering as much as possible on them, from almost new to ready to be scrapped. Here's another example of the colors. When I painted this shea yellow, people lost their minds that I painted a shea yellow, but I wanted to use that chipping effect, and yellow works by far the best to show off the oxide red underneath. So here it is, sprout point number 5. And once it was done, people seemed to take to it a lot more than they thought they would when I said I was going to paint it yellow. Beside it, we have one with a Banta wooden cab, painted green. So paint peeling off the boiler on the green one. about half of it. The paint's completely gone. So two different looks by using two different colors. Here's just another closer up view of the Sprout 0.5. So you can see how the painted on chipping effect looks, and it's super easy to do. Like I said, I just use one of those fan paint brushes, cut out about 70% of the bristles, dab it in red oxide, and then do like you do with a dry brush, clean off any heavy stuff, and then just start dabbing on the edges and the faces, and that's how it comes out. And it's a pretty good look. Here's a kit bash that I just did recently. This is called Moose. This is a Bachmann Mogul cut down to one dome, and it's on a Ken Kidder HO262 drive with a little four-wheel tender behind it. Almost out of coal there. He's standing the tender leaning on the shovel because there isn't a whole lot left to shovel. But Moose got his name because of the antlers on the front, but he's just a cute little bugger and one of my favorites. Another one I recently just did as we go on here, Jerry. This is a 2442, which Bachmann made one with the long, skinny boiler. And I wanted to make something a little different. So this is a Mogul boiler, but it's on a PFM HO Schnookum 2442 drive. So it's a much smaller piece than what Bachmann put out, but beefier looking because of the heavier boiler. So once again, a unique piece, the Hillsgrove 4. For those that don't have room for a layout, I love to build dioramas. This is a small one called Fuel Stop. And so you can use all the different materials and all your skills and everything else in something that's 14 inches deep and 28 inches long, or whatever the case might be, something you can set in a bookcase. But the idea for this, I wanted to do a wayside building that was just totally dilapidated. As you can tell, I really like dilapidated. So this one is so far going that the old stove fell through the rotten floor joists and is laying in the crawl space underneath. Makes for a lot of conversation on this piece. And if we go to the next one, you can see the fuel tank up close. This was a cast fuel tank, weathered with pigments again. Lots of detail, the barrel with the pump on top and the cinder block. Some cracks in the brick that I put in the casting, dug in with an X-Acto blade, things like that. So here's I'm really into the photography, and I love to shoot anything that I possibly can outdoors before I put it in place. This is just a simple shot of a critter outside, and the detail and the color, everything just pops. You know, even with today's modern full spectrum LED lighting, you just can't get that intensity on an indoor shot. So anytime you have anything, even if it's a structure, you can just set it on a piece of board and take pictures of it outdoors. It's really a nice way to shoot the picture, so you have references for that piece before you put it in place indoors. Here's another outdoor shot. You can see, look at the detail in the scenery, even below the bridge, underneath in the shadows, the ferns and the spark, the glisten off the water, things like that. You just can't get that with artificial lighting. Now here's one shot. This is with the this is a scratch built warehouse that I have, and this was shot inside. Not too bad using the new LED lighting. The colors look good. Some shadows, not quite the intensity of outdoors, but still it makes for a good photograph. This is a large building. It's about 30 inches long and probably 18 inches tall. This is another scratch built. This is Tri-State Manufacturing with the Dwarven fiber optic lighting. This one actually has 42 individual lights. The windows are boxed on the inside. This is a backdrop building, and they're boxed so that when you light it, the lights are in individual windows. It doesn't light up the entire interior of the building. The next shot will show you the overall structure. This one's 22 inches tall and about 4 feet long. And finally, this is a scratch build of, I call it the tipple hopper, or hopper tipple rather. And on East Broad Top in Robertsdale, they had the hopper that they used as bunkers like this, but they weren't covered. And I understand that when they would get freezing rain and ice storms and things like that, they didn't work very well. So when I built it, I thought, well, we'll cover it so it would actually work right. So this is individual stick build. It's extremely large. Those are O-scale, full O-scale, 2-rail size hopper shells. So the building is about 30 inches long. And with that, I'd just like to say that I'm sure as you listen to me tonight, you've gathered that I see model railroading as an art form. I focus just as much on color and composure as I do on functionality and operations. I've combined my artistic talent, photography, and my love for trains into a lifetime of enjoyment and fellowship within our beloved hobby. And with that, take any questions or answer any comments anybody might have.
Thank you, Al. I've been looking at the chat coming through here, and Ryan Abority said, how do you create those seamless backdrops?
It was, I special ordered it. It was a one-piece 70-foot long backdrop.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Came from Train Junkies in Utah. They'll make them any size you want, running right to left or left to right.
Cool. Okay. Bill Hobbs says a couple of things. He said, number 8 is a real oddity, and I do agree on that. He also says, which I also agree with, the real challenge to continuity is when your layout takes so long to finish that your skills improve along the way, which I think is very true.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I agree with that. But the layout you saw tonight, I built in 30 days. So yeah, I've worked out all the bugs. So being a professional layout builder, you have to be quick at it. But yeah. Of course, I had all the buildings were pre-built and everything. The trees are pre-made. But yeah, it went from an empty room to what you saw tonight in 30 days.
I have no coherent comment to make about that. So okay.
Who needs sleep?
Jim Brown. Yeah, it's just like, yes, when did you sleep? Coffee, yeah, and gin. Jim Brown says, great presentation. I love the creativity that you excel at, which has resulted in a truly unique railroad. I agree with Jim there. And Dave says, oh, and actually I thought this one too. Dave Adams says, how did you create the grease coatings that were shown at Shea?
Okay, so I use black artist paint, like the oil paint, artist paint.
Yeah.
And I just mix a little bit of high gloss with it. I actually still have dull coat high gloss. So mix a little bit of that in with it and then just dab it on. Just make sure you don't get it into moving joints and let it dry. It remains looking wet because of the gloss coat. And yeah.
Actually, 3 other people asked the same question. No, I'm reading down the list. So,
everybody likes the grease. Yeah.
Yeah, we like a good bit of grease. That's good. Gerald Harper says, how did you make the louvers in that last building that you showed?
The louvers, they are from Motrac models. They're laser cut.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Cool. Good answer. Several people saying
although I added they're very plain. The bolts where they're bolted in place and those are all, I added all the the nut and washer heads and all that. So.
Okay. A few people just say, great modeling work. Thanks for sharing, and thank you, and inspiring work. So quite a few incredibly positive comments. But yeah, by far the biggest question was about the grease,
Hey,
which I think is funny. Yeah. Anyway, thank you. I'll pass it back to you.
thank you.
Thanks so much, Al. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight and share your wonderful layout. Now, tell us briefly, if you can, what the plan is, because I understand this layout's mostly come down.
Yes, everything, when we started looking at it, everything until you got to the stone viaduct, the first 3 or 4 pictures have all been stripped out. I'm going to a logging camp with a lot more scenery and trees and more rustic. I want to get away from the town look this time. I usually rebuild my layout about every 3 years. You shoot a couple thousand photographs and you look at it every day. I get tired of it, and I accumulate or build more buildings and things like that. So just want to change the look, and I'm hoping by the June show I have the whole thing redone, that when we have the open house, everybody can see a new layout.
Fantastic. I don't want to miss that. I also think we need to lean on you to try to put together a clinic for us on how you do ground cover, because I've very seldom seen ground cover as good as yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you. The trick is leaving it loose. And when I tell people that, they it kind of freaks them out.
Right.
Doesn't the gravel suck up into your locomotives? That gravel sucking into your locomotives, you have way too much grease on your gears. But even, and I'm not talking about fake grease, but
yeah, right.
Yeah, really, by keeping it loose, you get so much more texture, because if you put it down and then you spray it with the glue, you know how it just soaks down and sinks and shrinks, and this keeps it nice and fluffy and clean looking.
Well, that's been just great. I really appreciate your time, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you in, well, at the end of March. I'll see you in March in Ohio.
Yeah, Midwest.
And
Ohio.
Then we'll be out there also in Harrisburg in June. So, and anybody on the east side of the country who want a real good train show to go to, certainly the one that Al puts together in Harrisburg in the middle of June. What are the dates again?
This year it is the 7th and 8th.
7th and 8th. I believe that's a Friday, Saturday. This is a relatively short show, Friday afternoon and all day Saturday. Great food on site, really nice location, and Al puts together a fantastic show. So it gives us good hopes for the Pittsburgh show, because I know you're a chair of that. So
yeah, a good show. Plus, we have 10 classrooms of ongoing clinics and maker spaces where you can just sit and. Well, I said Ian's coming to paint figures.
Yeah,
and I know there's going to be more than 3 or 4 people at the front of the table to watch. So that's why I bought the overhead camera system.
Yeah. Good plan. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you.